Welcome to Elevate and Thrive, Breaking Barriers for an Empowered Life. I'm your host, Jen Smith, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. In this podcast, we are going to dive deep into the transformative stories of individuals who have faced adversity head on, emerged stronger, wiser, and more empowered. I'm here to share those stories with you, to remind you that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a sunrise waiting to greet you. To inspire you to break through your own barriers, rewrite your own story, and to step into the light of your true potential. So what can you expect from Elevate and Thrive? Each week, I am going to bring you stories of triumph, resilience, and empowerment. We're going to explore the depths of the human spirit, spirituality, uncovering the courage and the strength that lies in each and every one of us. But more than that, we're going to provide you with practical tools, actionable insights, and a community of like-minded individuals who are also on this journey alongside you. So whether you're facing your own challenges or simply seeking inspiration to elevate your life, know that you have come to the right place. Together, we are going to break barriers, defy expectations, and soar to new heights. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I cannot wait to see where it takes us. Remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your journey to an empowered life starts now. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Elevate and Thrive, Breaking Barriers for an Empowered Life. We have a super special guest. I know her through the horse world. We were involved in horse rescue together, and this girl is a warrior. I am so excited to have her on the podcast today. She is a cancer survivor. She is a single mom who raised her son. She was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2015, and she is 9 years past that and surviving and thriving. She's going to share her story today. She has been through a lot, and she is involved in some really, really amazing organizations that she's going to talk about as well. But she's going to share her story of how it started, how she got through it, and hopefully give people some hope that might be going through some similar things. My guest today is Dulce Santiago-Montoya, and she is here to share her story with us. And so welcome, Dulce. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I would love for you to take the listeners back to the beginning of this journey. I know that this cancer journey has been a big part of your life. And so can you talk about that a little bit and talk about, first of all, how you found out that this was going on for you, and then what happened after that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed March of 2015. I was 33 years old, which is big because it's becoming more common, but a lot of doctors back then would, just kind of put you aside because, oh, you're young, you don't get breast cancer premenopausal. But I had a really amazing nurse practitioner that listened to me right away. I had a cold, a very bad cold. And I came home from work, and my husband at the time, I came home, I went to bed. He came in with like Vicks, and he was, trying to rub Vicks on me. And there was a spot like right here on the side that it was painful enough that it woke me up. It like a sharp pain. And I was just like, what the hell? And we just thought maybe because I was so sick, it was like a swollen or a clogged lymph node. Well, I got over the cold. It didn't go away. It continued to hurt. It was kind of on my mind then, like consistently. So I reached out to my doctor, and I got in, and she felt it, and she's like, let's get you in for, a mammogram and ultrasound. Well, that took 3 months to get in for a mammogram and ultrasound. after, the initial kind of like, hey, this is going on. So when I finally got in, I had the mammogram. I went in for the ultrasound. The radiologist came in and looked at it, and I could hear her in the hallway telling another nurse to clear a spot for me tomorrow for the next day to come in for biopsies. And so I knew right away, like, this was not good. I had a feeling like she wasn't wanting me to hear what was going on in the hallway, but it was like she was very serious. Get me in. She didn't care who they had to move around or who they had to cancel, but I had to come in the next day for biopsies. So scary. I had 3 biopsies done. I had 1 on the left and 2 on the right. The right side was the most where I had the pain. Shortly after that, my nurse practitioner called me in early in the morning. It was like 8 a.m. And that's not good news when they're like, can you come in right now? And all they could tell me was like, you had cancer. They couldn't tell me what type. They couldn't tell me anything like, what's the next steps? Like, nothing. It was kind of just like they were going to refer me to a breast surgeon, and that appointment was like weeks away. And then so I was supposed to sit with this knowledge for weeks to get into this breast surgeon to tell me what was going on. And I didn't really accept that. I have a aunt on my mom's side that had breast cancer. And so I reached out to her right away and I let her know. And she's like, all right, you need to talk to multiple doctors to find out what course is going to be the best for you. And so I had reached out to UCSD. I reached out to City of Hope. City of Hope got me in that week, and they were supposed to be my 3rd option. They turned out to be my 1st option. The doctors there were amazing. Usually when you get a diagnosis, you meet with a surgeon first. I'm not sure why that's the protocol. It seems kind of weird. You meet with a breast surgeon first, and then they say, okay, well, the tumor's this big. This is what we want to do. They basically want to try to shrink it and then go in and remove it. Whether you're going to have a lumpectomy or a mastectomy, they still want to shrink it before they go in and have surgery. There's other surgeons that do it the opposite. Like, they go in, they take it out, and then you do chemo. Every doctor is kind of different, so nobody's story is the same. That's how City of Hope had planned on treating me. And she spent a good hour and a half sitting there and talking to me about it, telling me what type of cancer I had, which was basically how they described it is I had a planet and a moon. So I had 2 tumors, so like one bigger one and a smaller one. And they were diagnosed as HER2 positive. Not so bad, right? It's kind of 2nd most common breast cancer. So started treatment. I had an oncologist. His name was Dr. Somlo, and I did a trial with him where I had chemo every week for 22 weeks. So every Monday I would go in for chemo. Kind of towards number 17, 18, I felt like my tumor was growing a bit again. Same day, went in for MRI, and MRI showed my 2 tumors grew into 1. So it was now just 1, and there was a 3rd growing. So when they do biopsies, they actually put titanium tags. So that's how they know when your tumors are growing. So the 2 tags were now in 1 lump. I got off of the trial. My chemo kind of stopped. I was stayed on Herceptin, which is a drug for HER2 positive that you're on for a year. And it's kind of like a very mild kind of chemo. They cleared a spot for me in for surgery. And like 2 weeks later, I had a partial mastectomy. At that point, I kind of wanted to do a double. So remove both because I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this a second time. And my surgeon was very adamant. She was amazing. She was like, no, we're going to deal with just the one because you don't want to have to deal with both right now. Like, that's just going to the extreme. And so we did the one. That was interesting. It's not fun. It's at all. And after the surgery, pathology turned out that 3rd tumor was a different type of cancer called triple negative. Triple negative is kind of the worst breast cancer type that you can get. It's very common in Black and Hispanics. There's not a lot of research and data on triple negative. They're just now starting, like as of 2023, 2024, coming out with drugs specifically for triple negative breast cancer. Treatment in 2015 was basically, let's hit you with the hardest shit that we can and just hope that it works. So that's basically what City of Hope did. They took my case to a panel. Basically, a panel of oncologists had to look at my case, and I was already 17, 18 rounds into chemo. I was ready to quit. I was done. My nails were falling off. I had lost my hair. I was still trying to work full time. And it was just getting harder and harder to just function on a day to day. And when your nails start falling off, that's kind of scary and creepy. So, my oncologist is like, all right, 3 weeks after my surgery, we're like, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to hit you with the red devil. That's what they call it. And it's literally like the hardest shit. They wanted like 4 cycles. So I would get one every 2 weeks. I ended up getting an infection in my gums because I ate popcorn and a piece stuck in my gums and gave me an infection. So that delayed one of my cycles. And January, I ended up having a blood transfusion and I finally got done with it. It was the hardest stuff that I ever had to do. I didn't eat for a week. I would have chemo on Monday and I wouldn't eat until Friday. I had a home nurse visit to check vitals on Wednesday to make sure I wasn't getting dangerous. Couldn't eat anything. Everything would come up. It was just, forget it. Smell of food was horrible. And got through it. I did 28 days of radiation. And then City of Hope's kind of rules, they don't do reconstruction for 2 years after your last day of radiation treatment, which really sucks. So I'm walking around with one boob and I had a prosthetic, which I think you probably saw when we worked rescue. I mean, like this plastic thing was so hot. And a lot of times I would just pull it out and just chuck it back in the car because I was getting heat rash from it.
Yeah.
Because, walking around with a piece of plastic on your skin. And so I went 2 years without having reconstruction. And I wasn't happy. I didn't like having to wait, to be put back together again. When I started talking to their plastic surgeons, I already knew that I wanted to do a DIEP flap. I did not want to have an implant. I didn't want to have another foreign something in my body. And then on top of being super active with the Young Survivor Coalition, you hear from other young women how sick these implants were making them. Like there was just constant problems and you just hear it like in the chats and on the message boards. And I was just like, nope, I want a DIEP flap. And a DIEP flap is basically where they do a tummy tuck. They take that skin and tissue and they reconstruct your breast out of that skin and tissue. So it's all you. It's all your fat tissue, everything.
Right.
Right? It's more invasive. It's a harder surgery, but to me, the longer outcome is well worth it. They're basically cut in half. When I went to City of Hope, they refused to do it. She was like, nope, I want to do a lat, which basically takes your skin and muscle from your back. And I was like, I ride horses. I ride bicycles. I'm active. I like going to the gym. I need my back muscles, and I just couldn't imagine like taking my back muscles out. That's what holds your body up.
There's a couple of things that I've heard you say, and I just keep thinking like the way that I introduced you is as a warrior, right? But it's like throughout this entire process, it sounds like you really have an advocate for yourself throughout this.
Yeah.
And really say, no, this is my body, and really having to stand up for what you felt was best for you. So that sounds like one of the really important ingredients in all of this.
It's huge.
What kind of advice would you have for somebody that's going through that and maybe they're feeling like they're not being heard in the process of everything?
And that's something work very closely with the Young Survivor Coalition. I lead the LGBTQ virtual group. And it's one thing that I say to everyone that comes into my, meetings or meetups is make sure you advocate for yourself. In the LGBTQ community, if you are trans and you are wanting to transition, you go through an immense amount of psychological evaluations and counseling and all of these things because you're about to change your body from one, I'm going to say form to another, sure. Right? Sure. But that's with your permission. Mm-hmm. When you have breast cancer or you have any kind of cancer, you're doing it with your permission, but it's not something you want to do. And it's one thing that I've realized in the past couple of years is that breast cancer survivors and thrivers, we really do need to have more of that therapy because our bodies are then mutilated without our choice. Yes, your choice is to live. You want to live, but it's not something you're actively going to be like, yes, cut off my boob, let me wait 2 years, and then let's go through a whole bunch of hard surgeries to kind of be put back together. So, really being able to advocate for yourself and really say what you do want and what you don't want, because some of these doctors out here don't listen and they just have this tunnel vision like, okay, I need to save this person. This, not necessarily they're a person, like they're just a name, they're a number. When I made the choice to not go with City of Hope for my reconstruction, I went to the New Orleans Restorative Breast Center. So I flew out of state to get reconstructed. The first time I sat down with my breast surgeon, I cried because he sat down in front of me and asked me what my story was. He wanted to know me. He wanted to know not only just who I was as a person, but my story. What did I look like before? What do I want to be? What do I want to be back to? And that was the first time I had doctors actually who are you?
That's so important. I am so glad that you were able to find that person.
And a deep flap surgery is 8 and 9 hours. So you're putting your life into their hands. And to me, whatever, I'm asleep. I don't really care. But there are women out there that really have anxiety about being under for that amount of time. And, you're trusting this doctor to take care of you, to make sure that they're going to do the best that they can. And I think by advocating for yourself and telling them what your end all goal is, then that way when you're under and you can't communicate, right? They know, okay, I've got to do at least this. If there's any complications, we got to get to this point. I think that's one thing that women need to keep in mind too when they're going through this reconstruction is you're not going to be the same. Mm-hmm. You won't be exactly the same you were before. Cancer changes you. It makes you a stronger person. It makes you, realize what your hopes and dreams and goals are, those are most important, not everybody else.
Or somebody that might be struggling to advocate for themselves, to find that courage to speak up, to find the strength to say, no, this isn't going to work for me because I know you, we know each other and you are a strong person and I admire your strength. For the people that might be struggling a little bit with that confidence or finding their voice, do you have any tips or advice for them on how they might be able to navigate that and find their courage and their voice to speak up for themselves?
I would say, do you have a best friend that brings out best in you? Whether it's a partner or a friend, I would have them go with you and be there to be your strength and supportive. I hear about people going to doctor's appointments by themselves. And I feel like when you go by yourself, you can be pushed into that corner without somebody saying, hey, wait a minute. Sometimes just having that second person there as your level of defense can help give you that strength to speak up for yourself. Even if maybe you're struggling to say something, but having somebody that knows what you want open the door in the conversation to let you be able to speak up. Don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Even if you're single, have a best friend go with you. Have your mom, have a sibling, have anybody that gives you strength, courage, that ride or die that's in the club with you, drunk in the bathroom, telling you what a beautiful person you are.
So I know you've mentioned this a couple times, but that Young Survival Coalition. So maybe if they don't have that person in their lives, then there's support out there. There's people that want to help you. There's people that want to help you through. And that might be a really good resource for people. Can you tell us a little bit more?
So Young Survivor Coalition focuses on young women with breast cancer. Back when I joined them, it was always premenopausal. Now I think they're saying more under 40 because it's getting a little bit more common for younger women to be diagnosed with breast cancer. And the biggest thing about that and the difference is there's different issues that young women have when they're diagnosed. You may be pregnant and being diagnosed. You might be still trying to plan a family when you're diagnosed. When you join a group that's more focused on your age group, then you can get support from those that are in your age group versus Susan B. Komen, where, you've got women that are in their 50s and 60s may not understand what you're going through at 33 and 23. I know a girl that was diagnosed stage 4 at 18. She had been trying to advocate for herself since she was 15 years old, and she's stage 4. So she's living with cancer. It will always be there. But being in a group with younger women that understand is more helpful than being in a group with like 50 and 60, 70-year-olds, right? If you don't have that ride or die, Young Survivor Coalition, there's groups all over the US, some around the world. They're branching out. And if you don't have a person, reach out to a breastie that you meet. There'll be somebody that you will connect with. And, there's Facebook groups, there's emails, there's a website. We do a yearly conference, which is so much fun. It's just an amazing weekend filled with 400-ish plus women that have all gone through the same stuff as you. And it's like a big party. It's so much fun. And that's kind of like what your meetups are. It's like that chance for you to relax, chat, connect with those that are going through the same thing you are. And that's important when you're going through it.
It's so important to find people that understand you, to understand the journey. And it might not be exactly the same for everybody. Obviously, everybody's situation is different, but to feel like you have somebody that can relate to what you've gone through on some level, I think is so important. I want to say to the listeners too, if you're not in that age bracket, the 40 or below, there's other groups out there. And so definitely go out and find something that you connect with. I also want to talk a little bit about, and I know this, but I would love to visit this little part of your journey. So you talked a bit about how your body changes, like you're never going to be the same after this. And you have done some pretty amazing things after the fact. I know that you were a pinup girl and you've done some modeling. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you came to that point? Because I would imagine that the confidence is a huge part of this. It's like you said earlier, literally rearranging your body. So how did you navigate that, find your confidence, and then get to the point where you were pinup girl and doing modeling for these amazing organizations?
Yeah. I have to credit my friend Story, who was my first breastie, as we call him. He was the first person I met when I was first diagnosed. And she was a state leader with Young Survivor Coalition in Temecula, where I was living at the time. And she was holding meetups. And she just became my ride or die. Like, we became the closest friends. We love fast cars. We love pinup. We love all of that. Story had a nonprofit called House of Volta where she created a pinup calendar full of just breast cancer survivors and thrivers. And she last minute had someone drop out for whatever reason and needed a person. And she's like, come do this. At the time, I was still married with my husband. I kind of got to know like the real me. And it was interesting looking at that photo shoot. I was so like meek and scared and in this little box and not being this courageous person that I am today because I was so worried about what the pictures were going to look like. I was so worried about what he would think. And I was so worried about what everybody would think. Just spending more time with Story, and she's this amazing woman who she wears what she wants. She does what she, like she doesn't conform to like traditional fashion. She does Story. And I feel like she brought out the real me slowly. And I remember the first time I told her that I was leaving my husband. And she was like, finally. And I was like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, no. That needed to happen a while ago. And afterwards, did another photo shoot, and it was completely different. And so when I look at the two photo shoots together, and I realized like how much of a box I was put in and not being my true self. And I think that's one thing with cancer that makes you realize when you have death like knocking at the door, you start thinking about what you really love and what you really want to do. And you do it because you don't care anymore. You're like, I'm just going to do it.
You've already kind of faced like the worst case scenario, right? And you made it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
and that really takes a lot of that fear that we would carry around in these what if scenarios. Like, what if I chase my dreams and it doesn't work out? It's like, that doesn't even compare. It's like, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, at least I tried compared to
right.
what I went through.
It's just amazing how you start realizing. And it's not like when you're in the chair getting the chemo, it's the afterwards. And you start realizing who you are, your dreams, your aspirations, what you want to do. Do you want to live the way you're living, or do you want to change? Do you want to change it up? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And before I left my ex-husband, I remember him coming to visit, and I was like, I want to learn how to ride a motorcycle. I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. And you're just like, why? I just have like the old Dulce back, and I was just like, she died with the chemo way back when, she ain't coming back. And I think that's when you start living for yourself. Who cares what others think? Because like, what is that going to get you? And including family. Like, if your family doesn't accept you for who you are, so what? You can't choose them, but you can choose friends that are probably a better family.
And it sounds like you had that. It sounds like Story was that for you. What a beautiful gift to have her cross your path and
Yeah.
be able to help you really step into your authentic self. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with in general right now. And society makes it really, really, really tough sometimes to be who we really are. And we can get lost in that. Like, we don't even know who we are. And so it's like these things, like you said, you wanted to learn how to ride a motorcycle or you wanted to do all these different things. And you're right. When we listen to people around us and their opinions and what they think we should be doing, it takes away from light. And it sounds like it took this major event for you. And then also having the right support system around you to really bring you back to this place of figuring out who you were and
Mm-hmm.
and what was important to you. Do you have any advice for people? Maybe they're not dealing with cancer or a major illness like that, but I think that this is such an important thing to talk about is this authenticity. stepping into
Yeah.
who you are and living your life and just being you completely and wholly, regardless of what other people think. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the hardest part is that we feel like we don't have permission. And I feel like even with my immediate family, I've had a lot of issues, decisions that I've made. And it's actually come to the point where family that I've grown up with does not talk to me anymore. My mother does not talk to me anymore. She's even blocked me on Facebook. I mean, right? That's like the ultimate, right? When you get blocked, right? And, I went into therapy because of that, because I just felt like they're my family. I need to have them in my life. And it wasn't until I was in therapy and she's like, you don't have to. You do not have to have people in your life that do not bring you joy. And I think it was hearing her give me that permission to remove these people that are not bringing me joy, that are not supporting me, that are not listening to how I want to handle. You don't need anybody's permission to live your life the way you want to live it. I feel like as a society, we consistently want validation from those around us, but you don't need validation. Just be you. And, if there's others around you that share the joy of what you're doing, then that's your validation, not somebody agreeing with what you're doing or how you're doing something. I worked in the corporate world. I was a director of rooms and for a hotel. I had other things in my life. My dad got really sick and then he passed away. And it was like the realization that I should have been spending time with him in these last days. And instead I was like working and I was like on my work computer in the hospital. I'm like, why did I do that? I needed to have this job. I needed to make all this money. And like, this is what you do. But then I was like, wait a minute. Life is too short for you to sit here and lose time with family, with friends, doing things that bring you joy. You somehow figure out how you can get all of it
I love it. It's so
without validation. Nobody needs the validation.
You validate yourself when something feels good to you, right? Like that's the validation right there is how do I feel today? How do I feel doing this thing? I know you quit your job and then you started a dog care business, right? So down in San Diego, if anybody is in that area, check her out. We're going to post links to her business and everything in the all the places that this is going to be posted. And even that in itself is so brave because it's going against, like you said, what we are told we should do. And I think a lot of times when we go against the grain and we follow our heart and we have these realizations and we're like, no, I'm going to do it different. There can be pushback. There can people in your life, like you mentioned your mom. That's a hard situation because it is family. But I love what your therapist said in that you don't need to have people in your life that don't bring you joy. And I think that that is such great advice. And that's something that I'm seeking myself is like, what brings me joy? Follow the joy, follow the happiness, follow what makes me feel.
Right?
That should be the compass. That should be the compass. And everything else is just noise. People's opinions, people's beliefs, that's theirs. Do what brings you joy and makes you happy. I love that message. If there is something that you could say that you want to leave as your legacy, what would that be? Can you tell a little bit about just how you going through all of this has changed your perspective, brought you to where you are now? It sounds like you've stepped into your authentic self. You're following your passions and you're doing your business. If you could leave something with the world after you are no longer here, what would that be and what would that look like for you?
I'm still living, I have this amazing wife that has really supported me, you know, just living, following the joy, right? I have my first horse, 40 something years old. I have my first horse, like that little girl's dream. And it was my wife that told me, what are you waiting for? So a legacy, I mean, I think a legacy that I would like to leave behind is for people to not wait. Don't wait to take that vacation. Don't wait to learn how to ride a motorcycle or learn how to ride a horse, or don't wait, just don't wait. I get, there's always financial obligations. I'm not saying to forego the financial obligations, but, do what you can within what you can. Travel where you can. If there's an amazing sale on a ticket to London for like $500 round trip, do it. Figure out the rest when you get there.
I love it. I think that is a beautiful, beautiful words of wisdom. And I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. I truly believe you're going to give a lot of people hope and inspiration.
I hope so.
I know so. I know so. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.